Hello, Cookies here. We are taking a look at a viewer-submitted VOD. This is a plus 18 the other side as a Holy Priest, and the affixes were Tyrannical, Bursting, and Volcanic. And I'm actually just going to pause this for just a moment. It's kind of hard to see when I pause it, but you can see the talents and conduits and legendary and all that stuff up here at the top left. So I appreciate it a lot when we have viewer submitted VODs and they have something that lets me see, what talents and conduits they're running. It just helps me get a better idea and lets me give some feedback on it. So talking about that, the only thing that I see here, everything is pretty standard, so everything's all good. The only thing that I would consider changing, and maybe there's a reason that it wasn't changed because of preference or anything like that, but the tier 3 talent row, where you take Guardian Spirit, there is another talent which is Binding Heals, I believe it is, and that is a really good talent to take for this dungeon specifically. I think is a really good example, the other side, because especially on Tyrannical weeks, the bosses that are really challenging are going to be pretty much all of them, except maybe the last boss, I would say, is not very healing intensive, but all the other bosses are pretty healing intensive, and they do lots of unavoidable AoE damage to the entire group, right? So Hakkar does a bunch of unavoidable AoE damage to the entire group. Dealer Xy'exa does a bunch of unavoidable AoE damage to the group because you're taking fall damage, you're getting the lightning debuff, you're having the bombs go up in the air and take damage. Like, there's just a lot of people who are constantly taking damage, and you don't, it's like it's varying. Like, you don't know who necessarily is going to get picked for certain mechanics and who's going to be taking damage and stuff. And then lastly, you have the Manastorms, which, as I've talked about in a previous video, during whenever Millhouse is active, she is going to, or sorry, I always get their names mixed up. Whenever Millhouse is active, he is going to make the group take a lot of unavoidable AoE damage. And then whenever Maleficent is the active boss, she's going to make the tank take a lot of single target unavoidable damage. So whenever Millhouse is active, it's a really good time to have Binding Heal, and then also, like we already talked about on the other bosses, because every time we flash heal or regular heal, it's going to also heal ourselves for a percentage of that healing done, which is really beneficial on those bosses where the entire group's taking damage, because we almost never have to worry about ourselves as far as healing goes because of the self-healing value from Binding Heals. And then the other thing is, because it's bursting week especially, it even gives more benefit to heal through bursting, because now whenever bursting is active, we really don't have to heal ourselves at all. We can just press like a desperate prayer, and then just spam heal other people and be totally fine. So that is the only talent that I would consider changing on this week of affixes, and in this dungeon in particular. But again, there's been plus 25, plus 26 DOS keys that have been ran where they don't run Binding Heals and they run Guardian Spirit instead. So it really is up to preference, but that's the only thing I wanted to mention before we kind of get into this. I'm just going to go ahead and skip ahead to the first boss because there's really not too much going on here. I guess we can talk a little bit about this. And one thing I usually always talk about before we get really into any of the other docking points is the UI. The UI is really clean. It looks like a similar setup to what Yummy TV or Growl uses. So very good on that. Everything looks in order. The only like minor thing, which I don't know if you use it because of dispelling or for what reason it is, but just having 2 unit frames. If you don't use these unit frames and you're kind of just trying to hide them off to the side, you can actually just fully disable them in LVUI. So that's the only small thing I would mention, but everything else is very clean. I think the only other thing... Oh, you can see Apotheosis down here. Okay, when I first looked at the VOD, I couldn't find Apotheosis anywhere, but it looks like I found it on the bars now, so easy to track. So going into this, not first pack, but the first pack we're going to be talking about, it looks like you're utilizing Boon as much as possible on cooldown. You're using the right casting sequence of 2 Novas and an Ascended Blast, so that's good. And you're also, when we first go into this pack, if I rewind it just a little bit, you do dot everything pretty early on. You have like a Divine Star that goes in. You get your flash concentration stacks up. And there is one small thing that could have been improved here so that you didn't have to get all your flash concentration stacks back up, which is when you get right here to this doorway, when you walk up here and you have about 10 seconds left. I know the group is already kind of ahead of you, so that's probably why you just wanted to push forward and not risk it. But I would honestly just wait here and refresh your stacks really fast before continuing forward, because then you don't have to walk all the way over here and then start the pull and then use literally 5 GCDs in order to get your flash concentration back up. So it's just a minor thing, because then you could have like started immediately dotting all these mobs and not had to sit here and spam flash shields into the tank. But then right after you get your 5 stacks up, you literally target every mob and dot them. We're going to see the only minor thing here that I'll talk about as far as optimizing your damage is Holy Fire is your most efficient damage spell you can possibly press. So that should be like the first thing on your mind, is getting that on cooldown before you think about doing anything else as far as doing damage. So it should always be like, as soon as you get 5 stacks here, your first cast should be target something and press Holy Fire right here. But instead what you do is you target everything and press Shadow Word Pain, which is still a good habit, but you really want to get that Holy Fire on cooldown, because then by the time that you're done dotting everything up with Shadow Word Pain, you have Holy Fire available again. And it's super, super beneficial, especially for like priority damage, which should be going into the Hexer, which like right here while you're using your Nova or your Boon of the Ascended, you are targeting the Hexer, so that is very good. That's what we want to be targeting, because that's the healthiest mob. And even if it dies before the other mobs, that's still more ideal, because the Hexer can't be CC'd in any way, and it does a ton of damage to the tank, and it also has the most danger value of ruining a key in a pug group because of the cast that it does and how it heals, itself to full HP. Good master spell to get rid of the bursting here. Refresh our stacks. Get a Circle of Healing and a Prayer of Healing out. That's good. And then again here, you start the boss, and it's just going to be a minor note I'm probably going to keep making. Is the first thing you should think about doing is you do it, you like prepare for the boss correctly. You make sure you refresh your stacks. You kind of get the group a little more topped off. You get a Prayer of Healing going. But then the first thing you should do when you target the boss here, and your intention is I'm going to do a little bit of damage before I have to start healing, which is correct. But the first thing you should think about doing is Holy Fire. It should be Holy Fire and then Shadow Word Pain. But you Shadow Word Pain first here, and then you cast a couple other things. I couldn't tell. It doesn't look like you cast Shadow Word Death. Looks like you cast Divine Star, and then you Holy Fire afterwards. So it's just a minor thing, because then by now you already would have 2 Holy Fires out, like by the time this one expires. Like right now you'd already have another one rolling, and it's just extra damage going into the boss. It's really, really good for bosses and again like priority damage. And then here we're hitting I guess it just depends on the group, but honestly on this boss fight I wouldn't be focusing I would just be focusing the boss and letting die pretty naturally, because this fight gets more hectic the longer it goes. So the later you get I feel like it's kind of better, but again I could be completely wrong about that. So don't quote me on that or anything, but that's just kind of, if I was pugging, I would just focus all my damage into the boss and kind of let die whenever everybody else does damage to it. And then even here, for example, like with talking about the binding heal, like right here, you could literally just heal up the mage and the warrior with your the first row talent, Trail of Light, because you just throw a heal on the mage and then you start healing the warrior, and then they're both getting healed from Trail of Light. And then you wouldn't have to heal yourself at all, because you would have binding heals, and it would literally just keep you topped up the entire time. So you almost never have to worry about yourself, as long as you're being good about pressing your defensives, which I do want to mention you are doing a very good job of doing that. One thing I would do on this fight is just always save Fade for every set of the blood barriers, because sometimes you kind of just press it when you're targeted by something. And I would rather see just a fade every single time that the boss does blood barrier, because it's just more ideal in that sense. Like here, you cast it with the blood barrier. It's actually hard to tell if you timed it correctly. Okay, yeah, you cast it in time, so that's good. I thought when I saw a little bit earlier while I was talking, I thought I saw Fade not get used on one of the barriers. Because the ideal thing that you do is you cast Fade on every single barrier no matter what, because of the cooldown that it has. It's just always available for every barrier. And damage reduction is what you want to be using on the barriers when you have it available. And then Desperate Prayer can kind of be used as your, you get targeted by the blood debuff, or the ads are fixated on you. That's when you can use something like Desperate Prayer. Maybe you do use Fade for every single blood barrier. Maybe I was incorrect about it. So if you did, then that's a very good job. Another very minor thing about doing damage is here you know that Ur's dying because you're targeting it and like intentionally trying to kill it because you want to activate Boon and start doing damage. So what you should be doing here is right when Ur's about 15% HP, 20% HP, you should refresh this flash concentration buff, because then you go into your Boon of the Ascended and can not have to worry about refreshing this. Because now what happens is you have 8 seconds left on this, you're going to activate Boon, and now you're going to feel forced to refresh this buff in the middle of your Boon of the Ascended cast right here. So you waste like, 2 or maybe 1 cast of Ascended Blast, which in single target is actually quite a big deal, especially with the buff. So just try to refresh that before dies. Just try to get in that habit because it'll help a lot. Here's another example where if we had Binding Heals, we wouldn't have to heal ourselves here, but you use Desperate Prayer really effectively. You use it because you have the blood debuff on yourself. And then we're doing damage to the boss again. Keeping Holy Fire on cooldown, that's very good. So you're good about using Holy Fire. It's just a matter of like min-maxing it a tiny bit more by just pressing it a little bit, like prioritizing a little bit more. Because like even here, it's come back off cooldown and you're prioritizing refreshing Shadow Word Pain. So all it is in your head, you have Shadow Word Pain as a higher priority than you do Holy Fire. And you should just try to swap, like get in the focus of swapping those around, where Holy Fire becomes the more important button to press. Like if Holy Fire is coming off cooldown and Shadow Word Pain is expiring, you should default to pressing Holy Fire first and then refreshing or reapplying Shadow Word Pain. And then on this boss, just a small thing, it did die pretty fast, so there was really no moments where I felt like you were stressed out or anything or panicking. So you did a good job of healing, and you're playing well. Like I said, it's just a matter of a few different priority things. But what I would try to do is just use Apotheosis a lot sooner, because you literally press it when the boss is like 5% HP, when you could just press it like back here when the boss is like 40%, 30%, something like that. Like right here is where I'd probably Apotheosis. And all it would really do is like, yeah, you may not need it or feel like you need it right now, but the boss is going to die anyways, so you might as well just use up everything in your toolkit, because now you have to do all this work to heal these people, when if you just press Apotheosis, it's going to be so much easier and lets you, again, it like the main idea is by pressing Apotheosis, you get the work that you have to do done a lot faster, and now you can go back to doing damage or just relaxing a bit more and not having to worry about like, keeping the group alive necessarily, because Apotheosis is pretty much holding your hand through it the entire time because it's a 20-second duration. But yeah, we just end up pressing it really, really late, which again isn't the end of the world. I think you even mentioned when you submitted this VOD, you mentioned that you could definitely be using Apotheosis more, so at least being aware of it is good. But seeing it and like seeing how you can adjust next time is definitely important. Also, a very, very minor thing is while you're stunned here, just like in the Ardenweald zone, when you're done killing dealer Xy'exa, you can mount right here. So you can mount up while you're stunned and then just run out while you're mounted. So it's just a slightly faster thing, so you don't have to like waste a feather, because then you can mount out here and then use all your feathers to kind of run through this hallway. Again, first thing, I'm just going to keep re-mentioning it just so that we can really get the the habit built up, which is the first thing you're doing is targeting and then Shadow Word Pain. We want to target Holy Fire and then Shadow Word Pain. Refresh our stacks here. You dot up these two mobs here that you pretty much never need to do that. If you're going to do that, you would want to do it like as the very first thing as you step into the pack. Like you would need to Shadow Word Pain them like literally right here to make it even closely worth pressing. So basically just don't press it, honestly. Divine Star, and then you kind of just have to let your group kill them. If you feel like your group isn't going to kill them, then that's when you just, instead you use Holy Fire and Shadow Word Pain on them, like right at the start, and just don't worry about the Hexer at all. But by pressing Shadow Word Pain there, it just gets wasted because it's only doing like 2 ticks of damage before they die anyways, because they die so fast. And then here again, another thing is it looks like you're pretty good about pressing Prayer of Healing, which is a good spell, but a lot of the time you shouldn't really be pressing it. Like here, for instance, you press it when the Hexer's almost dead. Like Prayer of Healing is a good spell to press when you're either A, forced to move, or when there's like a lot of downtime and you have nothing really else to press because like you can't do damage for some reason, or the mob's dying or something like that. So instead what you would do here is just press a heal on the Warlock after he got hit by that damage, because it's not damage that's going to continue. He just got hit by the lightning discharge and then it's done. Like he's not, like that Prayer of Healing is still just sitting on him at 5 stacks. Like it's not actually doing anything. So it is good once like bursting gets rolling. It's a good button to have. But again, we could just press heal on him if we're worried about him at all, and then you could just go back to doing damage, because like that Hexer still was pretty healthy. So you just have like basically the answer there is do damage instead of pressing Prayer of Healing. That's mainly what I'm getting to, or Prayer of Mending. Hopefully I wasn't saying Prayer of Healing that whole time. Sorry if I was. Prayer of Mending. That's what I'm talking about. And then we go into this pack, we dot them all up. Again, Holy Fire is off cooldown, so we should be prioritizing that. Only now we press Holy Fire. So that should just be a bigger priority. And then as these dots are falling off, it looks like you refresh them a little bit after. That's totally fine. But we do want to try to be in the habit of always like setting ourselves up so that the group is healthy when the debuffs or like the dots are about to expire, so that we can reapply them before they expire. You want to be reapplying them like right here. I mean, not in this exact situation. You obviously don't want to reapply your dots when they're this healthy. Like for instance, you reapplied a dot to one of them, right? You reapplied a dot to this one, which technically you don't really need to because it's dying so fast, but I guess that was kind of hard to judge because the Warlock pressed his Tyrant, so that one was kind of difficult to gauge that it was going to die that fast, so that's actually fine. And then here again, if you want to help kill the relic, or any of the relics for that matter, it should still, like, you should really still follow the habit of Holy Fire first, then Shadow Word Pain, and then do damage. But really, to kill the relics, because they die so fast anyways, I would just Holy Fire and then Smite, or like Shadow Word Death. I just wouldn't even apply Shadow Word Pain most of the time to the relic because it's going to die so fast. Basically, if you're not getting like half of the duration of Shadow Word Pain to last on the mob, like if they're dying before half of the duration is up, it's probably not a button worth even pressing. And then there again, you prioritize Shadow Word Pain instead of Holy Fire. So just something to work yourself out of. And then here you have Holy Fire back up, so you could have pressed it before the mob died, just do a little bit of extra damage again. Because Holy Fire also does initial damage. That's also why it gets a lot more value than Shadow Word Pain. Just more efficient of a spell to press in general. And then when we go in here, same exact thing. At this point, I'll try to stop mentioning it because it's been so obvious, so now you can just kind of see it as each pack happens. We go in with Boon. And we're focusing the the Death Speaker. That's very good. That's what you want to be doing. So that's definitely something I will mention throughout this that I've noticed is you're very good about target selection. You're always selecting the right target and hitting them, which is super, super important. One thing here also that I will mention is, at least for bursting, I haven't noticed it really, so it could just be an oversight on my part, but it doesn't seem like you're using your regular Dispel very often for bursting. It seems like you're just using Mass Dispel, and then like here, for instance, you Mass Dispel, it only hits 3 people, so there's still 2 people, the tank and the warrior, who still have 3 and 4 stacks of bursting, and you don't end up using your Dispel. It looks like it is on cooldown, so let's see what you ended up dispelling actually. Like it was used right there. Was it? Oh, okay. You're dispelling the disease off the tank. But same thing here. Like as the bursting starts rolling, you Mass Dispel, and then you should see like that your Dispel is about to come back off cooldown. So like right here, I guess at that point the ticks are already done. So never mind. That's actually totally fine. I just didn't see that your Dispel was on cooldown, so. And then here again, we want a Holy Fire on the mob. I'm gonna try to remember to not keep mentioning it, but if I see it, I might just keep saying it briefly. Because see, only by now you've put on Holy Fire on the mob, so it's a lot of like potential damage that you're missing out on. And then here we're gonna have a Rage coming up, so we really want to be prepping for that because sometimes it happens right away like that. Like you're doing a pretty good job of it. You press Apotheosis, that's very good. Should use this other holy word up. Like you're getting line of sighted. Yep. Okay, you end up using it. That's good. Minor thing, but I know it can be a little bit hectic as this is starting to happen, but you do a good job of like applying a dot. But then as the tank is running into the next pack, you should really just start targeting all of these mobs or the warlord since he's going into them and trying to dot like as much as possible, because the goal should always be do as much damage as you can, or at least get it rolling, especially because as a holy priest you have access to dots and stuff like that, so you have a lot more access to easy damage that you just press and then you can kind of forget about it for a little while. So you want to try to get that damage rolling before you have to sit here and start doing a bunch of healing like we are here. Let's see what went wrong here. I think the biggest thing is just so you dispel pretty early on the tank. So because there's all these raptors, there is what, 4 raptors in this pack or 5 raptors. You dispel at 3. Did you dispel at 3? No. Okay. So yeah, this is the problem. Okay. So these raptors are always going to sync up their bites, but because they're like the tank is running away from them, they're going to be desynced a little bit because only the ones in range can bite him. So like one bit him and the others are trying to catch up to him and then bite him. So they're all going to apply a debuff to him. So what you should do is wait until you see somewhere close to 5 stacks. It doesn't have to be 5 stacks, but essentially what's going to happen is no matter what, 5 stacks are going to be applied to the tank in a relatively short amount of time. So your choice is either wait until all 5 stacks are applied and dispel, or wait until close to 5 stacks, because then at least the tank only has 1 or 2 stacks if you dispel at like, 3 or 4. But here what ends up happening is the tank gets 1 stack because, like I said, he was kiting the mobs, so he only gets bit by 1. He gets bit right about here. And then you dispel that instantly because obviously we don't want that debuff on the boss or on the on the tank. But then what happens is all these other raptors catch up and now they just start biting him, and now you have no dispel. And that puts him in a really bad spot because this debuff hurts a lot. And then the bursting starts rolling in, and then your dispel comes back off cooldown. And at this point, you're just thinking about booning, so you're not thinking about the debuff stacks anymore. And then by the time that you are going to try to heal the tank, he still has 5 stacks. So really, like, the mistake here isn't necessarily the first dispel. Your first dispel was fine, but you should, like, just be aware that next time maybe just hold your dispel for just a couple seconds longer, and you would have dispelled 4 stacks instead of 1. And then what you should be thinking about, sorry, while these raptors are alive is dispelling the tank again as soon as your dispel is back off cooldown. So right here, instead of mass dispelling, you should be like single target dispelling the tank to get rid of bursting and those debuff stacks. You could also like try to preemptively use your mass dispel. I know you're in the middle of booning, but this is just where it's like you just watch the health bars of the enemies, and as they go down, you see right here there's a big stack of mobs that are about to die. So you should know, like you should start thinking, okay, there's going to be a lot of bursting stacks here. So even though I'm in the middle of my Boon of the Ascended, I'm just gonna precast Mass Dispel right now. Like right here, I would start precasting Mass Dispel. And I would honestly probably just press it in melee, because melee are the people who are most in danger, honestly. But either way, no matter where you put it, you should just be like right here. You should have already had Mass Dispel going and hit a few people, because then you're in a much more comfortable state to dispel or do whatever you need to do to catch back up. But you fall a little bit behind there because we're really late on the Mass Dispel or the bursting. So I think like the main thing that I'm trying to get you to take away from that poll specifically is don't get too caught up with Boon of the Ascended. Don't be afraid to just like cancel Boon of the Ascended essentially, or stop what you're doing, like stop blasting and using Nova, and instead like fill with other spells. Like what I'll usually do is if I'm in a tense situation or a bad pull or something where Boon is not gonna work out very well, I'll just still be casting Blast, but then in between Blast, I'll fill with different spells other than Ascended Nova. So instead of using Ascended Nova, I Dispel, or I'll Mass Dispel, or I'll heal, or I'll do things in between, but I'll still be casting Blast as much as possible to at least get a decent amount of output from my Boon. We're gonna skip the drill. This pull is always pretty rough, so we'll take a look at this. This is another pull where I would definitely just press Apotheosis either really early or right after my boons expired. We finish the boon, we refresh our stacks. Should be Divine Starring because it's really good here. There it goes. That's good. Dotting everything up. That's fine. And again, it's kind of a minor thing, but honestly, on this pull, it's obviously depending on key level, but even here, I would not feel comfortable with the warrior being at like 90% HP. I would want to have him at full HP, especially being in melee, because there's just a lot of times where these headless clients, they target whoever's closest to them. So in a pug group, if this is a pug group, what's going to end up happening is the warrior could just randomly get targeted by all of them at once and just instant die. So you really want him as full HP as possible, because even there, like it gets like the bursting stacks get a little bit out of control with like his HP. So just keeping him a little bit more healthy, like melee DPS, especially during that dog pull, I would try to keep them as healthy as possible. Just melee specifically. Ranger are never in that much danger on that pull, but melee are it's always really tricky. And we're gonna go to the next boss. This is again, like I mentioned, while Millhouse is active, having binding heals is actually huge because you just never have to heal yourself at all. Looks like we're focusing that's totally fine. On this boss, I think is probably more worth it during Millhouse rather than Maleficent. I don't know if you were hesitant to dodge there because you were on the crystal or you just weren't paying attention to it, but always try to be aware of like the timer on the laser. So what I usually try to do is just look at who's targeted by it, and then it's just like you kind of just count in your head, like because you can hear when she's like casting it, she'll say it's laser time. So when I hear that, I'm just like, okay, I'm ready to move to the side. And then like right here, as soon as I see this line, I just strafe a little bit to the side. I get out of the way, it pops, and then I do what I do. All right, and then I go back to doing what I was doing. So like it seems more like you reacted to that because you saw it on the floor and then you tried to move right here. And by then it's just like it's too late. So it's just something that you want to try to be a little bit proactive with. It's something that you should just when you hear the bosses like have certain dialogues that go off with their abilities, you should try to use that as your, as your trigger to dodge. And like even here, it seems like you reacted again because right here the line's already been displayed on the floor, and then you move like after the line starts disappearing, and you also run the really far way. So if you were a little more proactive with it and just thought about it ahead of time, you see the line on the floor, you literally just barely step to the left and you're totally fine. And you don't have to do all this running that you did. And you also casted a feather, so it's like using a GCD and all that stuff. So it's just something you want to be aware of. Also, a minor thing here, which makes it almost really dangerous for you to dodge, is what I do with the laser is I never put it right on the boss like this. You're standing like literally directly in melee of the boss. If the other person is also standing in melee, it's going to create this tiny, tiny, tiny little Z on the floor that's almost impossible to dodge, and it's going to like cleave all the melee. So what I always do with these arrows, even if I'm playing like a melee healer, like I'm playing Resto Druid with Feral Affinity or Holy Paladin or Mistweaver Monk or anything like that, is I'll line up the line first, and then I'll just take a few steps back and just give some space, because then it creates a bigger line. Because do you see where the cutoff is here? Like, so you have the you have like the corner of the line right here, so it makes it impossible, like almost impossible to stand in this little spot right here where my mouse is. So it forces you to dodge like into this volcanic, which is just unlucky, but this is exactly why we want to like do this instead, because then if you look at the warlock who stood further away, his corner is way up here, so he has plenty of room to like dodge in like this, and it gives more room for the people who are closer to the boss. So it overall just makes the line easier to dodge for everyone, including yourself. So that's just a minor thing. I would definitely try to just step a little bit more away. And then we use Boon here. I don't know what your haste is, and I can't see like blast cooldown, but usually when you're lusted, you can just boon, you can blast and then just Nova one time and then blast again, but again, it depends on your haste. I think if you're around like 23% haste baseline without any like buffs or anything like that, that's when you know that when you're lusted or PI'd, you can do one blast, one Nova, one blast, one Nova. That's just my understanding of it, but I could be mistaken. So that's just something to check on. This looks like we lose our stacks. Chasing the bombs around. So here, especially as the keys go higher, the tank, you're kind of like, what's happening here is you're kind of just letting the tank handle this himself, and if he dies, you're not really giving him anything to fall back on if he makes a mistake with his cooldowns or anything like that, or his defensives. So what you should be doing here is, again, it's all about where our mindset is and what our focus is and being proactive on that. So when Millhouse is active, we should be AoE healing a lot and keeping everybody in the group topped up, because that's what helps us survive mistakes. And then the opposite side of the coin is when Maleficent is active, we should pretty much just be like single targeting the tank. There is still some AoE damage that needs to be healed, but our top priority should be keeping the tank at full HP. It also looks like we forgot about that bomb over there, so we want to keep an eye on that. But the big thing is definitely keeping the tank alive, because you can see here as we're fighting the boss, you're kind of just like leaving the tank to fend for himself, and you're healing other people, you're getting the bombs, which is definitely reasonable. Like, it's understandable because there's a lot going on, but other people aren't going to die. The tank is going to be the first person that dies no matter what in the Maleficent phase. Like, if anybody dies, it's going to be the tank. So you should just keep him topped up as much as possible, and then after he's topped up, that's when you can switch your focus onto everybody else. And then here, it's kind of the exact opposite. You should be focusing your healing on the group and keeping everybody topped up before you focus on tank healing and stuff like that. And other than that, it looks like you're doing a pretty good job of keeping everybody alive here, and then the rest of the fight should be pretty smooth sailing for the most part. Here, I definitely wouldn't be afraid of pressing your Holy Word a little bit sooner, because you would have got some CDR on it. I can see that you're trying to do the thing right here where you disable the bombs like as they step out so that you don't have to chase them. The best advice I can give for doing that is stand on top of the boss, like get really, really close up here in melee, and then turn off your nameplates if you're having problems with nameplates. It looks like you don't have friendly nameplates enabled, so that's all that matters is just disabling friendly nameplates, which it already looks like you do that, so you don't have to worry about it. And then you just look for this sword icon like you are, and then you just spam click on the boss. But if you were just a little bit closer, you want to be just a little bit closer to the boss, you'll get them more consistently because that's where they're slipping away because you're pressing it like out here. So if they run the opposite direction from you, they outrange you before you even have a chance to like finish the channel of the cast. But if they run this way or towards you, then you're totally fine. But if you just stand like a little bit closer to the boss, I almost stand like inside the boss's hitbox and then I kind of face my camera like pointing straight up and down, like looking down at myself. And then I spam click on the boss like that. So that'll just keep it a little more consistent. Mask here. If you ever need to clear some space here with the Enraged Mask cast, you can just Psychic Scream and it will get rid of them and they won't finish their cast. Looks like we use another Apotheosis here. That's very good. Okay, that's good. That was a very good use of Psychic Scream. That's what we wanted to see. Also, this is a tyrannical mask, so I will mention that it does seem like you get a bit of a late start when Rage starts. So honestly, when Rage starts, ideally what should be happening is like you fear these masks, you don't have to move anymore, so you don't have to move this way. Like as the Rage cast is starting, you should already be casting a heal. Like right now, you should be casting heal, but instead you kind of wait, you cast another smite here, you finish the smite cast, that first tick of Rage goes off, and now you start healing. But this is going to cause you to fall behind really fast, especially in hierarchies or on fortified weeks where these are a lot harder to heal. The intention should be that you are literally casting a heal and starting to keep the group alive the moment the first tick of rage goes off. And then from here, this would be like your second heal cast, and you're just already in way better shape by doing that. So that's just something to help with like healing the mask on higher keys or on fortified keys. It's going to help a lot just being a little bit more like just have your finger on the trigger a little bit faster with healing. Like switch into healing mode just a little bit sooner because you really want to be in healing mode as the rage cast is starting, not when it's already finished casting and it's starting to channel, because at that point you're going to be too late a lot of the time. Here we're doing damage, we're still focusing the right targets, we're very good about doing that. This is another thing here where we see all these mobs dying, and we really want to try to be just a little bit more proactive with our Master Spell. So like here, right as this stuff starts dying, I'm looking at all these HP bars, and I'm like, okay, they're all under execute range, which is the great part about playing Disc Priest with Plater, is you can kind of see when things are in execute range and when they're not. So when you start seeing multiple execute range bars, that's when you should really start thinking like what I would do is I'm like sitting here and I'm not thinking about it yet, and now I'm like, okay, we got one bursting stack, other stuff is starting to die. I'm getting ready to Master Spell, I'm getting ready to Master Spell, I'm like, pretty much at this point, I'm almost pre-casting it, or I'm getting ready to, and then it's like, oh shit, I have to dodge this line, I'm gonna step out of the way immediately, and then finish my, original intention of casting Master Spell. So now I'm gonna Master Spell. It doesn't matter if you clear one person's stacks or everybody's stacks, just target Master Spell somewhere where it's going to try, like you try to guess where the most amount of people are, which is generally going to be melee range. So I usually just put it somewhere centered near myself. And then we, probably have a lot less stressful of a situation because we don't cast Master Spell until here. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, but we were kind of mistaken on the one earlier, but I will mention it here because it definitely is the case, is when you finish this Mass Dispel, you should almost always, whenever you're dispelling bursting stacks as a priest, you should always Mass Dispel, but then have the next reaction should be to cast a regular dispel. Like you should almost always plan to cast a regular dispel right after Mass Dispel, because now instead of healing these two people up like you have to, you could have just dispelled one of them and it reduced a lot of the like extra pressure that's there. So every time you're pressing Mass Dispel for bursting stacks, always be ready to cast a regular dispel just in case you miss anybody. Oh, it's gonna be so scary. Don't do it. Okay. Trying to run through. Definitely wait. As a priest, unfortunately, you literally just have to wait every single set unless you have something to get through. So, here we go. So this is going to be where that Mass Dispel into regular Dispel is going to play off really effectively. What ended up happening here? Okay, so this is where we come in. And I guess you just don't notice it, but if you ever see these like vines stretching towards a player, they need a lot of help or they're dead. But it's these absorbing haze, it needs to be interrupted or stunned. So you can like Holy Word Chastise that, or just heal up the player who has it. So instead of casting Boon there, if you would have done like a Flash Heal into Holy Word, then they probably live. But it's kind of just an unfortunate situation because that absorbing haze shouldn't happen anyways. It only happens if there's like weird metrics that are met that the mobs act really strangely with, like outranging and not being in combat and stuff. Kind of hard to explain. Here again, we have a lot of mobs that are starting to fall into execute range. So my initial intention is I see all this, I'm getting ready to press Mass Dispel, I'm getting ready to press Mass Dispel. I'm probably pressing Mass Dispel right about now. That's good. Looks like you cancel it. That's okay. You step to the side and then you finish your cast. That's totally fine. But then again, right here, even though it's just one stack of bursting, it's still just going to help you build a good habit of just pressing a regular, just dispel somebody. Just right here, when everybody gets another bursting stack, just dispel somebody. Instead of pressing that flash heal on the Warlock, like look how much healing your flash heal did. So here's the Warlock's HP when he has this bursting, like right past the last letter of his name. You flash heal, bursting brings him right back down to the exact same number. So like your flash shield did as much as if you just dispelled. So dispel would have done the same exact value, and it would have helped you build like a better habit to, be in the habit of pressing dispel after mass dispel. So. Here we definitely want to try to be targeting the Elderhorn. So you've been really good about targeting, like about just targeting in general, but here the Elderhorn is always going to be alive the longest, so we really want to make sure we try to target him as the healer. Also, if he dies first, it's more ideal because all this shit falling on the ground, the swirlies and stuff is absolutely awful. Here again, we have a lot of stuff in execute, so I'd be ready to dispel. I'd already be casting Mass Dispel by this point. Oh, it looks like it's on cooldown, so never mind. Yeah, you wait until it comes off cooldown. That's good. That's just me not being familiar with your UI, so I apologize for sometimes not noticing that things aren't available. But that makes total sense. That was still a good dispel. You did it like right as it came up, so that's good. Let's see. Actually, I want to check something. Okay, so that is one thing I will mention, that when this happens and you know Mass Dispel isn't up yet, right here I would just be regular dispelling someone. So again, instead of pressing this heal on this mage, just dispel him, and it would have done the exact same thing. Like it would have benefited probably even more than that heal. Because then you can just dispel the mage and then use that heal on somebody else, and now you're getting even more value overall for like the group healing. Gonna skip ahead. We're just gonna kind of talk about bursting at this point, so I'm just gonna kind of skip ahead until bursting starts rolling in and see how we deal with it. Here we have Boon going. Then we're refreshing our stacks. Divine Star. This is where I'd really, really, really be pumping healing. Like right here, as I finish my boon, I would like even right here, I would just be spamming heals into people. I might not even cast that Divine Star. Like, and you're also like right here. Let's see. I think what just happened. Let me just double check before I talk about it. Right here. Okay, yeah. So you use Holy Word. I might get these wrong. Holy Word Sanctify. It's the AoE healing Holy Word. You use Holy Word Sanctify, and then the next spell you press is going to be Holy Word Serenity, which means you're not utilizing your tier bonus, which I could be wrong. You may not have your tier set yet or something. I don't see your character, like I didn't see any of the gear you're wearing, but I would assume that you have 4-piece. So you really want to make sure that you're utilizing your 4-piece, which means casting that Holy Word Sanctify. Sorry, I'm still like recovering from being sick. And then after you press that first Holy Word, you should be healing somebody. So like this mage, for instance, is pretty low HP. So I would Holy Word Sanctify into like a heal or a prayer of healing, just anything to do some healing. But generally heal is going to be your best choice, or like flash heal. Holy Word Sanctify, and then right here, yeah, you definitely just press a heal on the mage. It literally just full heals him because of the conduit and the tier set bonus. Or yeah, even if you don't have the tier set bonus, you still have the conduit, so it's still worth pressing. You have Resonant Words. And then we mass the spell again right here. If we were good, if we were sorry, that sounded so mean. I meant like I just didn't finish my sentence. If we were good about being proactive with those regular dispels after mass dispel, what would happen here? We'd have a really close mass dispel, and then the mage doesn't get dispelled, but we're already disciplined in pressing a regular dispel right after mass dispel, and the mage stays alive instead of dying. So that is something that you definitely want to be. I think that's like the biggest takeaway from this video as far as healing bursting goes, is being always like being a little bit better about pressing your regular dispel too. Don't just rely on mass dispel. Go ahead and skip down a little bit. Yeah, I would definitely not be afraid to heal a little bit more during bursting. Like when the bursting stacks start rolling in, don't be afraid to really just start spamming heals into people. Like even here, for instance, just like spamming heals with your globals into people if you feel like the group needs it. If you feel comfortable, then it's a different story. But we'll go ahead and talk about dealer Xy'exa. Same thing there. You Shadow Word Pain, the relic. It's kind of pointless. You might as well just put like a global into smiting it and stuff like that. Use spells that are actually going to do more damage to it, because the Shadow Word Pain just doesn't do enough to be worth it. We kill here, and then we go into Boon. That's good. What was that? What was that? Okay, it was a holy word. On this fight too, another thing you can really utilize is again your 4-piece bonus and your holy word button presses. So like here, for instance, you holy word chastise the boss, and the warlock is like half HP. You could just put a regular heal into him, and because it's buffed by your holy word chastise, it would full heal him instantly. But instead, you put it into a smite. So the smite does extra damage, but now this warlock, you're gonna have to put like 2 spells into him. So there, exactly, you put 2 heals into him before he got to full HP. So don't forget that when you, ooh, that's rough. You even got to type my bad. I would just heal. That's rough. Yeah, there you just hesitated and like tried to press a regular heal. So obviously I don't need to talk to you about that. You know what you did. One thing here though to recover a little bit faster is you can, I haven't seen you do it yet, but you can use levitate on yourself right as you're getting close to the ground, like right here, and then you don't take fall damage. It's not super ideal because you're running Mechanicos anyways, so you get that nice benefit of getting reduced damage taken from you. If you have the, I don't know if you actually, do you not have the, it doesn't look like you actually have the, oh, there it is. It just popped up. So yeah, letting that go off is technically more beneficial. But if you're in one of those situations where it's like, I'm literally going to die to this fall damage, you can just levitate yourself as you're about to hit the ground. And same thing for other people if you want to, but don't do it too much to other people because sometimes it can mess them up. I also wouldn't be afraid to press. You were really good about pressing your defenses on Hakkar. I wasn't paying too much attention on the Manastorms, but on this boss, it looks like you were not really pressing defensives at all. So like you have the bomb, you don't press the defensive. You had the lightning, you didn't press the defensive. You're dying at this point, you don't press the defensive. You got another lightning stack here, so it's stacking up to 8 stacks now. And there still hasn't been a use of Desperate Prayer or Fade, so trying to use that a little bit more will definitely help. Let's see. And then here, while you're in the air, don't be afraid to use instant cast spells. What you're doing is you're kind of, looks like you did end up using, who did you end up using it on? It didn't look like it healed the Warlock. I guess it just didn't do very much healing. Okay, that's fine. Then we press a heal. Apotheosis, that's good. Trying to catch back up using our holy words. Yep, all very good. Again, don't be afraid to press Holy Word Chastise on the boss here and use that as a way to buff your next heal. Like you can almost think of Holy Word Chastise as also being like a way to increase your healing output. It's definitely worth the global because you're reducing how many heals you have to press, or you can buff other spells and stuff like that, obviously. Okay, and then here's like another thing where you have a lot of stacks of the debuff, so you're obviously taking a lot of damage and you're kind of scared of dying right here. But the Warlock is much lower HP. Again, we can try to utilize defensives a little more. And when you use spells like Holy Word Serenity here, I don't know if you intended to use it on yourself. It looks like you were trying to target the Warlock as you went up. No, okay, it does look like you hit yourself intentionally. So always try to be in the habit of instead, when you start getting low HP, try to think to yourself, what button can I press right now to keep myself alive that doesn't involve me using a spell that could be used on somebody else? That was like super complicated the way I explained it. But try to resort to other things before you press healing spells on yourself. Try to resort to a health potion. Try to resort to a health stone because you have a warlock in your group. Try to resort to desperate prayer. All these different things, try to resort to them instead first for yourself. So whenever you are low HP, you should be asking yourself those questions of what do I have available to heal myself so that I can then use these other spells like this holy word. You could have used it on the warlock or the warrior and they would be so much more healthy right now. And you wouldn't be in this position where you have to sit here and spam heal them back up. And this would be another case where it seems like you just might not notice that you have your holy word back up because you're kind of panicking and trying to keep the group alive. But it's very important in these situations to be using your holy words as soon as they come up. So like right here, you should be using holy word serenity and then immediately going back into healing. But like spamming heals like this is less beneficial because you're getting so much more value out of just pressing a holy word serenity into a heal rather than heal. You're gonna stay behind that way. So try to, even in those stressful situations, always try to keep an eye on your holy words and really try to be utilizing them and bouncing off of them because it's going to help you keep up and catch back up if you're falling behind on healing. We can skip this next pack because I would assume nothing bad happens. You definitely don't accidentally pull the matriarch, dude. I was actually memeing and then I fast forward a little bit and I just see everything pulled. That is so... You hate to see it. Well, that definitely happens, but that's okay. We're fine, right? Looks like you're fine. Oh, it looks like you're cleaning up some more percentage that you need. Double Elder Horns to try to focus the Elder Horn that's higher HP, which you are. That's very good. Okay, then we can kind of just skip ahead here to Mueh'zala. All right, so Mueh'zala is pretty straightforward, but we'll still talk about it. Okay, so yes, I can already see a huge problem. So we're going to find out where that problem went, or what happened and what caused that problem. Okay, so it is this right here. So dispelling on this boss is totally fine. Mass Dispel is a great spell to use on this boss. The problem is your positioning. So I'm going to use my pen tool that I'm trying to get better about using in videos. And we are going to talk about positioning on this boss. So you have yourself here, you have your mage here, and you have your warlock somewhere over here. It's not perfect, but you guys are there. And then you have a melee DPS that also got dispelled right here. And it looks like, I can't really tell, but it looks like the tank or someone is also right here. So these are the 5 players. And you guys all get hit by Mass Dispel. That is fine, but it's not fine where your positioning is. Because now what's going to happen is you're going to have the purple circles come in, and you're going to have one right here. 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 And one right here. So how are you going to dodge all the stuff in the fight with all those circles literally covering the entire floor? So how do we fix this exactly? Well, what you should be doing is when you Mass Dispel, try to be as grouped up as possible with other players. So what I would do in this situation specifically is before I Mass Dispel, I would just stack on top of one of the other ranged DPS. If they're not stacking, that's fine. As long as you're kind of in the same row, that's all that really matters. So think of it like a road. So think of it like you have, let me go back to the yellow. So you have one road like right here. This is the back of the room, right? And then you have the middle row, and then you have the front row where the melee stand. So these are the 3 rows. So you have 2 people, pretty much we'll just consider the mage kind of in the back row. You're in the middle, the melee are up front. So when you Mass Dispel, you're dispelling somebody in every single row. The intention, the goal with this should be that you are dispelling and leaving one row open at all times. So one row should always be clear, because then it makes it easy to dodge. So all you need to do is get out of the middle row here and then dispel yourself, and everything would be mostly fine. You just make sure you don't dispel. Like when you target your Mass Dispel, if there's like a melee in a weird spot like up here, just don't hit them with the dispel. Because you could get really unlucky here, and what could happen is when you go into this little intermission where you have to dodge stuff, if you... So like say the warlock is stuck over here, which he currently is, but let's say he's even more to the left, he's going to start trying to dodge this Master of Death, and all of these circles are going to spawn as he's running in, which they literally do, and he actually gets hit too. He just has a defensive rolling, and it's a low enough key so that he doesn't get completely one-shot by it. But if you're in a bad position, like as a priest, you don't have the safety net of pressing Dark Pact or being a warlock and having a bunch of HP and stuff like that. So see, this is good. You intentionally stepped back a little bit, but it looks like... Okay, actually, let's correct that. Because it looks like you actually... It looks like you dispel yourself in the middle, and then you move back to the mage. And all you needed to do here was step back to the mage, and then another thing we don't want to do with this boss fight is dispelling ourselves offset, because exactly this right here. It causes this very awkward thing where now we're having to dodge like twice as much, because now it's like, oh, there's this circle here, I got to move out of the way. And then it's like, oh, okay, we're all clear now. Nope, there's a bunch more circles, and now I got to dodge again. So you want the circles to line up. So if you don't have Mass Dispel, you don't want it to be dispelling at all. You don't want to offset the circles in any way. You want to just let them all be, you know, at the same time. Because it makes it a lot easier to dodge, as long as, again, we don't block off any of the rows. Oh, so see, this right here is like an exact example why it's so nice to stack up. And again, this isn't necessarily your fault, but it's the idea that we can at least reduce the problem by one person. Because of all this that starts to happen, it just like gets all over the place, and it's real rough. And the higher key you go, the more punishing it becomes, because if you get hit once, you're dead. And the boss fight is lasting longer, so there's more chances for it to mess up. And then we use Boon here to kill the ad. That's totally fine. If we need it to kill the ad, we should definitely use it. Then we go here. It looks like the warrior dies, unfortunately. You guys end up killing this? This video is 6 minutes long. Let's see. Same thing here. We're standing in the middle row and we dispel ourselves again. It's a little bit better because you're off to the side as long as you're not directly in the center, but this can still cause some issues. So it's just something you want to be mindful of because look how like difficult this is. You're literally stuck here in the middle and it's like there's almost like the warlock got hit again. So we want to really keep one of those rows clear because again, if we look at it, you can see that every row is taken up. We took up the back row with this one from, I believe, the warlock. And then there's 2 in the middle here. So, again, it's not going to always be like, it's not necessarily that we can just fix the problem by ourselves, but we can at least reduce the likeliness of it being a problem by just understanding how we should be positioning for it. And then as you get into higher keys, you would ideally play with players who also are thinking the same thing. That's kind of the whole point of improving and playing with other people who are also improving, but sometimes it's not going to happen, so don't always rely on it. But again, even if we can just reduce the likeliness of it a little bit, it helps a lot. Oh, we end up going to the wrong spot. That's so sad. It's going to live. That's why this is 6 minutes. Wait, did you guys not kill a single one? This is rough. Same thing, we're dispelling ourselves in the middle here, and then we drop the other 2 in the back, so it's just like, at least now we dispelled soon enough to where there is a clear path in the middle, but it's so small, we really want a whole entire pathway clear, ideally. I'm going to skip ahead and see if you guys kill this, because at this point I've talked about everything that's important with the boss fight. Okay, it does look like you guys end up killing it, so it just takes you guys like 4-phase this fight. At least you had a lot of time. Plenty of time. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Again, like as a recap, I think the most important points is just min-maxing your damage just a little bit more. Just min-maxing your damage just a tiny bit more, and then with using Holy Fire before Shadow Word Pain, and then positioning a little bit, just min-maxing that on especially fights like Mueh'zala, and there's a few other points where we talked about positioning, and then making sure that on bursting weeks you're always mass dispelling and then ready to fire off a regular dispel on anybody that it potentially misses. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you also for the submission. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys again in another video.